Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Truths We Hold. It's our 8th episode. Hard to believe we're already in August, and we have made it over halfway through the year. And today we're going to take a deeper look at the truths we hold regarding the foundational truth that we hold here at NC Family regarding health and sexuality. And so this could be a hot topic. This could be one of those things where it's like, whoa, I think we're going to cover it today in a way that will be very careful, very sensitive, and very informative for you as you listen or watch this episode. So Adamo, let's start literally at the very beginning. Genesis 1:27. You know the verse well. You probably know the verse well. God created two. More specifically, He created male and female, and He created them in His image. So let's unpack God creating Adam and Eve.
Yeah, male and female, He created them. And so when we approach both health and sexuality, the concepts of both of those are found in that one line. So all of these words are very important. So male and female, so that's going to get really at the sexuality piece. And then He created them, yes. Meaning this all comes from God. Much like the Declaration of Independence, endowed by their Creator, that's how far back we're going with this issue, that God created man, God made man, both body and soul. And so the way He made our body is the way we want our body to work. And then He created them, so then the male body will have different functionings and different workings than the female body. And so when we talk about health and sexuality, starting with the health piece especially, what is often lost these days is seeing medicine as the effort to get the body to work properly.
Yes.
Meaning we can look at and study the human body over time and an individual person throughout their age, but across all humans, and see that the body is supposed to work this way. The liver is supposed to do this. The kidneys are supposed to do this. Your hair is supposed to keep growing, though it doesn't always. And so medicine is meant to restore those things, maybe not all of those things.
Not all of them, trust me. Well, it's almost as if a creator designed all that we know, and even, yes, one of the most intricate of those creations, our bodies, with a purpose in mind. And each of those functions, I remember learning in science class about vestigial organs. Even those organs have a function and a purpose. And it's important for us to understand the concept of the watch having a watchmaker. There is design and purpose as the Creator intended it to be. And I think there's this notion, if you will, Adamo, that it's only in the last 10 years or 20 years or maybe even 50 years that people have been bucking against the authority of God's design. And the answer to that is no. It's been since the beginning that people have questioned. I go to the garden. Did God really say this? Of course, Satan is not necessarily calling into question the design of the body. He's calling into question design and creation as God, as you so perfectly put it a moment ago, as He intended it to be. And that effectuates its way. That has its tendrils in every portion and part of God's design. More specifically, and possibly most importantly, in who we are and our bodies. So as we walk through that, there are some things today that people are paying attention to, that they're focused on, that they're calling into question God's design. Notably among those today is gender dysphoria and the transgender movement and ideology. Let's unpack that for just a couple of minutes. It seems like there's been a little bit of a pullback. There was such a hard push for a while. There's been a little bit of pullback in the last couple of years. What is happening today, and what can we as believers in the Creator and Jesus Christ do about that?
I want to take one step back first.
Sure.
You brought up going back to the garden, and I think that's really apropos to this. So, right, the temptation that Satan, tempts Eve with is that by eating from this tree, you'll be more like God. So that's man, human, choosing to put the creature in the place of the Creator.
Absolutely.
And go from the design to the designer. And that's exactly sort of the umbrella concern here with medicine, is that we're saying God designed me this way, but if I were the designer, here's the design I would want, so let me now have you in the medicine field, instead of looking at the original design and repairing it, look at how I would design it as the new designer and satisfy that somehow. And that's precisely what is happening with gender dysphoria. And there are other conditions, whether it's anorexia, bulimia. There are, in fact, people who suffer from thinking they've lost a limb that they haven't.
Yeah.
I always forget the term for that. But these people are perceiving or desiring some different design, or at least some different current form of the body that they have. And they're going to medicine, in some cases, to have medicine affirm or manufacture or artificially alter the creature that they are to fit their personal design for this. And it's interesting, sometimes if you get into the historical, philosophical background on things, you'll kind of look at Descartes and the I think, therefore I am.
Right.
And part of his own thought process that starts some of this trajectory is he's acknowledging, well, I'm not my own creator, because if I were my creator, I would have made myself differently. And so he then, to give him an ounce of humility, then surrenders being the creator. But now, centuries later, we're not retaining that humility, and we're saying, well, then I want to be the creator and the designer, and now make all of this do whatever I think it should do instead of how it's designed to work.
There has been a temptation and a tension throughout all of human history to try, at least, to wrestle authority away from the Creator, from God Himself. And this is nothing new. As we started out, this is age old. And I also want to speak a little bit of compassion and clarity into this as well. Many of the people who are struggling with gender dysphoria and some of the other things you mentioned, like anorexia, bulimia, and other things that would harm their bodies, they are struggling with a clinical diagnosable condition or disorder. And literally, I don't mean that in any pejorative sense, literally going against the order as the Creator God designed it to be. And so there needs to be compassion, there needs to be care and love, but there doesn't need to be a sense where we lean into that and say, oh, well, you feel that way, you think, therefore you must be. And I think even as compassionate Christians, we have to be careful that we don't fall into that snare, as it, I believe, has intentionally been designed to pit certain of us against one another. The transgenderism and the transgender movement has taken a life of its own in recent years. And I think it's important for us to understand that there are a lot of spheres of influence and contexts that we find it in, whether it's libraries, whether it's books, whether it's women's sports and intimate spaces, locker rooms, bathrooms. All of these places are places where the transgenderism movement has found itself with people struggling with gender dysphoria. I want to kind of, for just a moment, walk through gender reassignment and I think for all people, but specifically for minors. A couple of years ago, the state of North Carolina passed a bill, and it is now law, that protects children from this. It's the Help Not Harm bill, and it's now law. And it basically says, no, we're not doing that here. I think that's extremely important. And without overstating the obvious, why is something like that so important?
So the key word that you brought up and you highlighted it as well is disorder here. So gender dysphoria as a clinical condition is in sort of the field of psychology and psychiatry, right? And so going back to the umbrella concept, many psychological conditions or diagnoses include the word disorder. And ironically, if we won't accept that there is an ordered way for things to be, we can't define anything as disordered. And one of the many bad fruits of that is precisely this, that in fact, instead of seeing gender dysphoria as a disorder, that there is a mismatch with the order of the way things should be and the perception of the way they could be or are perceived to be. Because we abandon that acceptance of an ordered way, we then turn towards surgical or chemical or other medicinal fields and ask them to accommodate a blank slate, kind of, because if there isn't a right way, then it's sort of here. Now, well, then you just have to accommodate what I want. And so what we will see is with the designer concept. When a thing is designed, it has an intended way to be used.
Absolutely.
So if you take medicine, it comes with a whole book of information, the most important part being the directions. Here's how you're supposed to take this, because if you take it a different way, it won't have its intended results. Could be very bad for you, could be ineffective, which would be like the least problematic, but still a problem. So you want to read the way it was intended to be used so that you know how to benefit from its value. Similarly, you want to know how the human body is meant to exist and flourish and thrive and be healthy in order to help the person thrive and be healthy. And so when we see a person with a male body and a female body, or a female body, not and a female body, and then you allow them to, you ignore the disorder of misunderstanding that, and instead say, oh, the problem is your body. Well, now you're messing with that design, and you will never be able to thrive and be healthy, because it is impossible to make this design into that design. This will not be that. Like, you can't transform
Correct.
a Camry into a monster truck. Well, I don't know, maybe there are, but it would cease to be a Camry.
North Carolinians probably could figure out a way.
There's probably a guy. Somebody's gonna email us a picture of a monster Camry. But the point here is that by doing that, even adults, when they pursue this, they're going down a path that cannot lead towards happiness, because they're being put in a direction that is contrary to the design itself. And so even more so with our children, and I know you've got boys a little older than mine, so I'm still my kids are exploring with, why can't I be a boy? Why can't I be a girl? Like, what does that mean? What does a mommy do? What does a daddy do?
Why can't I be Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Because you can't. It's impossible.
Yeah. It's an interesting...
And it breaks their heart.
Yeah. My boy and girl, I know you have all boys, my oldest son and daughter also sometimes are like, well, I wish I could marry him or her. And it's like, because they just love each other.
Yeah.
And it's us as parents and as adults to take those natural curiosities and educate them into the ordered form of reality, so that they come to learn what isn't necessarily intuitive. And if you don't do that, the kids, it abuses and denies them the ability to flourish and thrive when we let them walk down a confused, disordered path.
Absolutely. I harken back to our last episode where we broke down the Declaration of Independence and this Jeffersonian, these three, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We talked about the pursuit of happiness and what that is. I mentioned the idea that it's aspirational, that it's the level playing field whereby we have the opportunity to be who God designed us to be. That is, in fact, what we're talking about is, in fact, yes, it's life, yes, it's liberty, but it's also the pursuit of happiness. God designed you to be exactly who He designed you to be, and you to be who you are, me to be who I am, and He created us in that beautiful patchwork and that framework where each one of us have a specific purpose in mind. And we have the opportunity to go along with that and pursue that calling and happiness, or we can live, as you said, in a perpetually miserable existence, trying to pursue something that will never happen. And that's ultimately heartbreaking. Let's walk through just a couple of other things really quickly before we wrap up. There's a lot of push today to be happy with other medicines, if you will. And this goes a little bit into the health aspect, whether it's hallucinogenics, whether it's some of the new age medicine, mushrooms and things like that. Is it ibogaine? Is that what it's called?
Ibogaine. Yeah.
Thank you. Or marijuana, or we're hearing a lot, even in the North Carolina General Assembly, about kratom, what that looks like, hemp-derived consumables, cannabinoid, all these things. And the question is, why in the world would somebody, and of course we can't ascertain everybody's individual thought pattern, let's talk overarchingly, really quickly, why in the world would anybody want to consume ibogaine?
Yeah, well, so if we're on that one specifically, there's lots of sort of panaceic suggestions and hopes and dreams for that. But speaking in more the abstract especially, it again comes back to the idea that we want the human body to flourish the way it was designed to be. And so when we're evaluating things like this, whether it's ibogaine, other hallucinogenics, marijuana, kratom, pick your thing, all of these things should be evaluated from, are they helping the body be restored to its original design and functioning in a healthy way? Or are they being used to cause the body to function in a way contrary to its design, but sort of at the behest of the individual or at the goal of some other benefit. A buddy of mine had a major ankle injury, and surgeons were able to use part of his thigh to sew onto his ankle.
Wow.
to sort of hold his ankle together because it had been completely shattered. It looks like a Frankenstein foot. But medicine is trying to make the ankle go back to working as an ankle.
Yes.
This guy didn't go in and be like, I want a thigh ankle because I think it'd be stronger and cool. That would have been a bad use of medicine. He would have then been seeking some artificial contrary to design. But what happened was he was trying to restore his ankle, and he's able to walk again. It's an interesting thing to look at the moment. But that kind of thing, same thing with these drugs. If these drugs are trying to go in sort of the transhumanist route, which is effectively the sin of the fall, I want to go above and beyond the human creature God made me to be. If it's that kind of thing, well, if I took this drug, then I'd be a better human. Well, no, you're human and you need to stay human, but you need to function correctly. So if there's something wrong with you and we can understand that this drug will fix that and restore you to a healthy human, that is potentially or hopefully good.
I'll bring one more thing up as we round out this episode. There are some that would look at marijuana or hemp or cannabis or some of these other things, kratom in its most natural form, and they would say, well, God made it, so it must be good for me. And I heard a friend of mine one time, he said, well, God made poison ivy too, but you don't see people rubbing that all over their bodies. There is something about a sin-cursed fallen world that we have to pay attention to. And so not everything in its present form is necessarily good for us. And it is not necessarily restorative in nature to put us back where the body is properly functioning. So it's important for us to note that there are certain things, while they may be from the ground or God made, they may not be good for us. And that's important for us to note. So as we round out this episode on health and sexuality, what should those who are listening and watching know about our position here at NC Family?
Oh, the easy questions. No, again, it comes down to we want to look at health and sexuality as living through our bodies in the way that God designed it, as the creature, having the humility to be, this is my body, the way God created it. I want to be healthy in that body. And that means exercise too.
Yeah.
That means eating well, not being gluttonous, of course, and living in a way that causes us to live a flourishing human life. Jesus Christ didn't incarnate as human to make us into some other creature. I mean, he elevated us to a divine nature and things like that, but through spiritual elevation, but he didn't change us into something else in our bodies. And so we shouldn't be trying to do that either.
Very good. Well, we have a purpose, we have a calling designed by God, and you can live out that calling. We'd invite you to join us here at NC Family as we live according to the calling He's put on our lives to ensure that North Carolina is a state where God is honored, religious freedom flourishes, families thrive, and life is cherished. So you can go to our website at ncfamily.org and learn more about how you can partner with us to effectuate God's calling and purpose in partnership with what we do. Thank you for watching this episode of The Truths We Hold, where we're focusing in on the inalienable rights that God has given us to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for watching.